Okay, so today I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to load my bisque kiln, the electric kiln that I use for bisque firing. It's pretty much the same model that they have over on the campus. The one difference is that my computer is on the wall and not attached to the kiln itself, but that shouldn't be a problem. But what I do is I have extra safety features that are not, you don't see on the kilns at the college, and two of those are, one is this dial here, which basically is a timer, and so it's a 20 hour timer, and so every time I load it I have to set it. So that's usually the first thing I do, is I make sure there's a white dot over here. I don't think you can see it, but it basically lines up to the 20, so this way there's lots of time. This here is the clapper. Okay, and there's a button on the inside here, a white button, and basically a lever here. And if you look inside the kiln, you'll see right here that is a prong, and there's a little cone in there, and then there's a bar just above it. And what that does is, as this little cone melts, this drops, and as a result of that dropping, this here goes, this rises up, and then it drops the clapper and it shuts the kiln off. It's an automatic, it's sort of an extra safety feature that my kiln has that the college kilns don't have. All right, so once I've done that, sometimes I remove the spy plugs for the spy hole, mainly so I don't bump into them right now. So I'm just going to put those off to the side. So right now, if you come in and look inside the kiln, you'll see that I have a couple, what look like 3-inch posts in there. The work that I'm firing are these larger pieces here. This is my shelf for greenware. And so I want to put all this stuff in here. So what I'm going to do first, I think, is, because I have these smaller items here, I got a couple shots, and then one of my students did these cats, and so I'm going to put those in first. And as you need to be aware of is, anytime you touch greenware, it's very delicate. All right, so you got to make sure that you touch it very carefully. All right, you got to be focused and not distracted, because if you break something, that's it. It's on you. You know, and you get pissed off students. So first thing I'm going to do is put these in here. Now these posts are too small for what we need, so these are about 6 inches. I just want to make sure there's plenty of room for the cats, and it looks like that's going to be fine. All right, so I check first before I even put them in the kiln. All right, if you look inside the kiln, I want to show you something that I did deliberately. The way the posts are set up, in this case they're the even height. My posts are such that I can I only need to put 4 in there, and these ones here are you can see here they're deliberately lined up sort of at a, not flush with the edge, but more pointed, like the one corner is pointing to the side and the other one's pointing in, versus here where it's kind of the sides are parallel with the sides of the kiln. That's because this is actually more surface area here, or I just feel it's a more stable connection as far as when you put the shelf on top of it. So I do that deliberately. Now, if it was a situation where we had different levels of the shelves, I would have to put these here. And then if it was a lower shelf, I'd put the posts on the corners. All right, so I'm gonna put these back. I'm going to carefully put the cats in. The student broke the tails off all her cats because she was not careful handling the greenware. She didn't realize how delicate and fragile it was. All right. She wanted these cats, when they're done, to sit on the shelf. Of course, if she has real cats and these are hanging on the edge of a shelf, they're going to fall. Probably. All right. Now, when you're doing bisque, unlike a glaze firing, you can stack pieces on top of each other. There are potters out there who I've seen where they don't use shelves at all. They just pile it all in there, you know? But I'm not that brave. So now I'm going to load my bowl. And it's one thing about when you're throwing bowls and you have a nice generous foot like this, you can easily grab onto it. All right? Now I'm going to see if I can get that other bowl in here. I think this is too big. I'll find out. So before I even put it in there, I'm going to test it. Nah, I got some room there. I can do it. All right. Okay, so that's all I'm going to put in there for that row. Now, in some kiln situations, like at the college, you'll have kiln wash on one side, and it'll be clean on the other side. So with a bisque, I tend to fire it the unwashed side and then glaze the washed side. Now I don't fire cone 6 anymore, so I pretty much flip around based on, I don't really pay attention, but generally I just try to mix it up, because over time the shelves will warp, and so you want to switch, you know, fire it one way and then flip it the other way. So you can see that one bowl has about 1 finger width, so it's just short of 6 inches. All right, now the next row, I think I'll be able to get all 3 in there. So let's start with this one. Notice how I have the handles are taller than the lip, and you can see how I wanted to dry it upside down so that it, you know, the air got to the bottom part, and so I put it up on top of this thing, and of course newspaper, so that as it shrinks, as the pot shrinks, the newspaper will move with it. So you shouldn't have any cracking. You can see there it's a pretty intricate, like I did a lot of different things with the bottom here, and on the inside there's a starfish. So this was similar to our project in Ceramics 2, where we had to use press molds. This was a pitcher. Now, one thing that's nice about my studio is that I like these shelves because they're open. And so when I can't turn something upside down, such as this pitcher, between the spout and the handle, it's just too delicate. You can't do it. I mean, you can do it, but it's not worth it. So once it got dry enough, and I want to make sure the bottom was dry, I took the newspaper off and set it here so that the air can get underneath it. And then finally, there's this piece here. No cracking, very happy about that. And that goes right in there. Now, I'm trying to fill up my gas kiln, so normally I would wait till it's full, but I just don't have the luxury of time. Because you can see here on my glazed pots, I usually need to have that rack completely full and overflowing before I can even consider doing a gas firing. So that's what those pieces that I put in the kiln today are for, to help give me some extra work to load up in the gas kiln. So at this point we're ready to go and I can start the firing. I'm going to lower the lid. Now let me show you how to do the computer. I have to step on the brick so I can reach over here. And so the way it works is this way. You can do, if you want to do a cone firing, you just press this button here, and then it'll punch in the cone that you want to do, whether it's 06 or 6. So for example, cone 9. So we're not doing that. It would be 06 if I wanted to, and it could hit enter, speed, because it's a bisque or something, or if it was a glaze. I try to do it slow, just because if it's a glaze, what happens is sometimes it fires too fast and the glazes bubble and blister, and they don't have a chance to smooth because it fires too fast. So I tend to go slow with the glaze and the bisque. Bisque for it just so it doesn't blow up, give it a chance to cool down. But anyway, I'm just zipping through here. We're not going to use that. So what I usually do, I have programs set up, and we just like at the college. What we do here is I hit ramp hold mode. User 1 comes up first. If I wanted to user 2, I would hit this button here, and that's a different program. For user 1, it's my bisque program, so I'm going to hit enter. And now they break it up to 3 segments, so at different times the kiln fires at different speeds. So you can do 2 segments, 3, 4, 5, 6. It just depends on what you're doing. The decal firings, I think there's 5 segments, but anyway, for bisque I do 3. So the first segment is 185 degrees. It speeds up. I think it zipped real quick. It's going to rise in intervals of 50 degrees. It's going to rise up to 185 degrees, and then I want it to soak. So I want to make sure all the carbonaceous materials and all that stuff and any of that moisture burns out. I'm going to set it for, everything looked really dry. So normally I do 8 hours. I did 4 the last firing because everything looked pretty dry. I think I'll be pretty safe at 4 hours, but I think maybe what I'll do is I'll tack on an extra hour just because it's really big work and I just want to take my time with it. So I'm going to do 5 hours. So it's going to soak at 185 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 hours. The second ramp is going to go up by 150 degrees, and that's going to go up to 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if you remember, that's around quartz inversion. Quartz inversion is when you have the quartz crystals, they expand and then contract. and it's that they contract as it cools down. So it's a real volatile moment in the kiln firing. But what we want to do is, just coincidentally, if you don't remember, it's around this temperature that you start seeing color in the kiln. So once you start seeing like the dull red glow in the kiln, then you know you're past that really vulnerable time. And then once you get past that, you can sort of fire quickly. But here we're gonna 1100. We're not gonna hold it at all, and it's gonna go up. The next ramp is a third 275 degrees an hour, and we're gonna fire to bisque. 1860 is what I do here, and it's not gonna hold. And then the alarm is at 9999, and we're gonna hit start. Well, hold on, I got enter there. I can hit start. All right, so now it's on. Oh, what's that? Oh, great. Let's try that one more time. Let's see if that. Well, so if this were live television, I'd be like, uh-oh. Of course. Oh, alarm was set for 0. That's why. So after, I guess I was moving too quickly. So let's fix that. User 1, segments 3, ramp 50 to 185, hold for 5 hours. Ramp 2, 150 degrees, up to about 1100. Ramp 3, 275 to 1860, hold 0, alarm. This is why that was the alarm going off. So enter, start. Okay, there we go. All right, now the last thing I want to do is I gotta keep the lid open so any of the moisture comes out. And so I just have an old brick. The college has a thing where we can prop it open. Mine's an older model, doesn't have that. All right, so it'll sit like that until we leave today. All right, so that's today's lesson. All right, no, let's go later. Thanks, babe. And we're done.